Y'all go.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're here live with David DuByne on location. He is in the Pennsylvania woods of somewhere on the East Coast, and I'm in my barn in Southwest Colorado.
At the thingamajiggy.
Yeah, as you can see, we've been having a long discussion. It's been 3 or 4 hours now. We're at each other's necks about preparedness.
Terrifying. Diamond was cringing in the corner there.
All right, so David, it's a pleasure to talk to you. And one thing I want to bring up to you before we get started, I want to show you a few things. Let's do that. Okay, this is how to turn a fertile soil into a junkyard, and it's called the Green New Deal. And I've been screaming about it for a couple of years now because the research I've been focusing on is how any of these green solutions are actually travesties when they actually pollute the earth more. They hurt humanity more. They're going to cause us all to become complacent, to suck at the teats of the powers that be. And, well, everyone's becoming bankrupt due to this whole idea. What are your thoughts?
They're still keeping you on the system. Yeah, right? Like everybody's talking Tesla. Yeah, but you still have to pay to fill up for that charge. Here in Tennessee, it's about $14 to $15 to fill up or to recharge your Tesla. It's not free. Even if you plug in at your house and you have the special charging station installed at your house, you got an electric bill every month. Yeah.
Yeah, but
you could be going to like magnetic motors and Diamond. We talk about this ad nauseum about these magnetic motors, and there's so many flywheels that are, they're using motors on flywheels, so there's no friction. And even that very simple principle, it just hasn't been expanded on. Forget Tesla, well, who I'm very much admire, but that kind of free power of just using a flywheel on magnetic separation to make something spin. And we're not even at that level after 120 years and trillions of dollars.
We have been on that level since the 1980s. It's been suppressed by the government. My own father worked in secret, beyond top secret, specially compartmented information. He shared this information with me when I was younger, that we had ways to be frictionless on highways in the late 1980s. The problem was when they realized that it would destroy the insurance industry, it would destroy the oil and gas industry, and so on and so forth. None of these ideas were ever expounded upon. In fact, they were crushed because of multinational corporations. But the biggest ruse that you just brought up is the whole electric car nonsense, where they said, everyone go buy this 60,000. Oh, now they're down to 55 grand. Buy this $55,000 electric car, and it's only $14 to fill up. Well, if fill up is only 300 miles, my diesel truck, when I fill it up, gives me 700 miles. And I might pay $150 for that fill up. But if you add up those $15 charges on your Tesla, it's going to take you 35 years to pay for your freaking Tesla, just on the savings. No one owns a car that long. It's a complete ruse where you dump all the money into fuel in the car and then you pay a little bit for the charge. The bottom line is that multinational corporations win both times. Not you.
Can you put that image up again? Because I wanted to point something out, that image there. All right. So if anybody doesn't know about reflectivity inside that field there, as insects fly into it, they're evaporated instantly.
Yeah,
they find a huge die-off in insect population, especially in peripheral areas of facilities just like this. And also when birds fly into it, they're so blinded and disoriented that they usually crash into something else. It's a massive travesty of how much wildlife is killed by installing these things, because how much heat is there that will then change the periphery microclimates that are around it, or cause mass area, because those are black solar panels they're absorbing. So you can't tell me along at least outside those roads that it doesn't affect plants and temperature. I bet they put a temperature. Oh, where's that square in there in the middle, Diamond? Is that a temperature station from NOAA?
Yeah,
that's how hot it would be in the middle of there. Although you think it's in the middle of the countryside. Come on, man.
That is exactly what that is. Now, I've seen on the mainstream in the last 3 days a bunch of articles on how they're growing cold weather crops under these. They're growing broccoli and cauliflower and cruciform vegetables. Brassicas underneath of these panels, and they're saying it's wonderful where you can get energy and you can get food. But here's the deal. The toxic waste that's dripping off of these photovoltaic cells is unimaginable. There's no regulation where they're being made in China. They're not cleaned or washed. The whole manufacturing process of making photovoltaic and robbing the rare earth elements from Earth is completely egregious, but only done in other countries that are not the US, so it's not regulated. We don't know the amount of pollution that's actually being created and the child labor labor, and on and on. I could go on for hours, but now we ship them over here. And look, we just put 127 acres of this toxic material on a farm that we're now going to sell the food underneath of these toxic panels to the people. And guess what happens in about 20 years? All of this garbage is garbage, and you got to throw it away. There is no recycling for photovoltaic cells. They crush them up, they bury them in the ground. The amount
they make very nice black mirrors, Diamond.
Of course, but the amount of leachate and the toxic elements that are in these panels is disgusting, and it will literally pollute the earth. If we were to make enough panels to run the world just for a decade, we would have more pollution.
Cover the planet.
Yeah, we would have more
to cover the whole planet, literally.
Yeah, and we would have more pollution than it would kill everyone on Earth within 100 years.
No, wait, you know, Greta is always out there like solar panel. But what about that 8-year-old child that doesn't create pollution because they're only using a hand ads to go down into a dark, non-braced mine to get those rare earth minerals because they're kids and they use them because they can squeeze into those super tight spaces, Greta. Are you kidding me? A huge amount of that production is coming from child labor. I mean, they're down in those holes, and it is so terrifying. And you see them come out, they're almost hypoxic when they bring them out by their feet. It is unbelievable what they do with this little hand ads, this little like fire axe to get down in there and chip because they can't blast anything. They got these kids down there working, and Greta is on her high horse up in some, you shall not do whatever. What about those kids in Congo, in the Republic of Congo, that are down there for your rare earths or anywhere else that you might look at across Africa?
Yeah, well, I'm worried about child labor.
Really sickening. There truly is. I look at this hypocrisy and just like this day, and it's so in your face that people can't not see it.
Yeah.
So either you go into this complete denial of self and move over into the lies, or you're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah,
I don't know. It seems like the separation of worlds is happening right now because you can clearly see in front of you what is happening. It's all bare bones out there. Curtains are pulled back, brick walls behind you. Which way are you going to go to the exit?
Yeah, well, just like we said, I think 3 or 4 years ago, they started manufacturing food riots in the UK and other places. Remember, you and I both reported on it. It was a test, and I think we talked about 3 years ago. It's a test to see how we would react, and we didn't react poorly. And so they were baffled. Well, so we're looking at here on the screen, David, another test.
How much do you know about Sri Lanka anyway? Because I've really been trying to look at this, but what do you seem to be way into these articles too. So tell me about Sri Lanka. What do you know about that?
Well, Sri Lanka is
organic fiasco.
It's not an organic fiasco. It's the Green New Deal fiasco. So they purported it as going organic, but all it meant was removing all of the dangerous chemical inputs into farming because to make the Green New Deal work, or the COP5 or any of these other stupid, we just lost you. Are you still there? Okay, DuByne's gone. So we'll wait for him to come back. But let's just give you the background on the Sri Lanka organic farming catastrophe. It had nothing to do with organic farming, everything to do with the Green New Deal. And what they did was they put in place regulations that prevented you from spraying herbicides, pesticides, and even fertilizing your crops. And within 3 years, the country has gone totally bankrupt and they're starving. So the entire experiment is gone wrong completely. And I can bring you up some more information on this as we wait for DuByne to return. Let me bring you up this video, which will completely tantalize you. And I will stop this screen and we will share this amazing video that is coming out from Sri Lanka today. And let me make sure I click on the right one. There it is. This is Sri Lanka. This is coming out just a few hours ago on Twitter. Sri Lanka has completely collapsed. Angry crowds now chasing and killing wealthy people in the streets. And let's play the video and it'll blow your mind. That's obviously a wealthy person there in front who's about to get hit on the head and stuff. Manages to get their stuff back up and run away. But when people are hungry and poor and there's very few people able to buy anything that has anything, then the society breaks down. And we're getting very close to that in the US.
A watch from him, like a Rolex watch or any kind of, just a regular watch. In a breakdown situation, would a watch have value in that sort of situation? So I'm playing devil.
David,
yeah,
we just got you back on the stream. You got cut off. What we're looking at is a stream.
Yeah, no, I was listening to you. I stopped myself so I could run out and grab. I needed some more water. I didn't want to disturb the stream.
Okay. Well, all you have to do is put yourself on. You can block the video. You don't have to completely remove yourself. So what we're looking at is Sri Lanka yesterday. And what they're doing there at this point, after it took about 3 years for agriculture to collapse there. They're now killing the rich people and stealing everything they have.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, you got the rich guy there running, and then you stole his Rolex watch, or you stole his watch. Like in a grid down collapse situation, that watch is going to come into the possession of somebody in that mob there.
Yeah.
So then on trading, maybe they weren't the person who actually hit him. It fell on the ground. They grabbed it first and took off. Whatever. There's some riches from there. Something that can be traded for something else. Like truly, what would the value be of something that you would, or they did? And that's the whole thing about these like lone wolf people trying to come around and come in and like, hey, I'm going to take all your stuff. They're going to be the first ones taken out for sure. But these people getting robbed in the beginning. I mean, what's something like that worth? Because if society breaks down, things are going to have a worth to them.
Well, if it's food and you're starving, who cares?
Food for whatever.
Who cares? You're going to kill that person for the food to feed your family. You're not going to care. So if these people are just opportunists,
they're opportunists and they're running their course there.
I mean, that doesn't.
So it's a watch or like some $2 watch from the States versus a Rolex, a watch in exchange for how many cans of tuna. These are the kind of things that are envisioned that I see there. I've been following it pretty closely. That's why I'm asking your opinion. How many years will it take them now to get chemical fertilizers back to the production they were, where there weren't riots, where there was enough food that they needed and also imported to make that balance? But
that happened today, which is why I'm bringing this up, DuByne. The government switched its policy today. When rich people are now being killed for their Rolexes, they now allowed chemical fertilizers and that whole bullshit green narrative to end. It was a 3-year experiment in Sri Lanka. It ended up in total upheaval. And here's the problem. The government and the regulators now don't know if it was in time to save the country. Because even if they get the fertilizer in time, the crop is still going to fail this year. It's about 50% under. And there's still food issues. So I think that they did it too late. They waited 3 years. It's like they took the word of the World Health Organization on an experimental jab and said, we'll trust it, and didn't do anything for 3 years. It's complete insanity. We are living complete insanity. Everything about the world is opposite of critical thinking. And there's a whole group of people, maybe 50% in the United States, that are completely delirious.
The takeaway for me from that Sri Lanka experiment, just on the very simple idea here, is 50% reduction going away from chemical fertilizer to 100% agriculture. So in this interim, in this switch where we're going into, BRICS currency is going to have much more value than the US dollar very quickly. I mean, within months here. Things that we're going to want to buy are going to have to be in there, either a central bank digital currency or the new issuance from whatever that BRICS currency will be, in order to pay to get some imports in, whether it be raw chemicals so we can produce fertilizers and pesticides, herbicides, whatever. A lot of that stuff came from China. Should I narrate through the beautiful music?
No, I'm trying to bring up some of the Netherlands footage.
You see where we're coming with this here.
Yeah. Have you been following that?
So minimum 50% reduction going to organics. So that's a lot of that's the way, the reason I'm trying to be a little long-winded with that, that's the way a lot of people are going to have to go. So I keep getting many questions on my channel like you do, like, hey, what's the best kind of fertilizer to make by yourself? Okay, you're looking at a year if you're going to do some sort of leaf compost from anything, yard clippings. You're talking about a year out minimum before you can get that whole thing in, because people think they can just dig in the clay and throw a seed and, well, I got massive agriculture. Woo. And, I got some aerial views of the farms out in the Netherlands. And I mean,
All right, so let's watch this.
Areas where the farms were kind of reclaimed swamp areas too, and they want to take all that offline and let it go back to swamp again.
This is
like, wait a minute, that's a purposeful use of that, you know. And I love the way they're doing everything.
This is earlier today. This is today in the Netherlands, where not only have they stopped all distribution of all food for the entire country, today they blocked the airports, the international airport. So the entire country has been locked down by farmers exclusively. Now, here's what I heard on some inside channels before I got to you. I was talking to some people in the Netherlands. There are now the truckers had gotten involved with the Canadian trucking movement a few months ago. They are now involved. They just bought a tank. They have $1 million. They just bought a tank, and it's escalating. So that's what's happening in the Netherlands. And I think that's, well, I think it's pretty awesome. Say again?
Let me a question about that. Was that tank from the U.S. off the black market through Ukraine smuggling? Was that the tank? They bought a U.S. tank off the black market through Ukraine? That was
I could imagine. I could imagine it's a U.S. taxpayer dollar tank that's now in the Netherlands.
I want a refund, bro. I don't want to pay VAT when I leave. I should get a refund for the tank. Anyway.
No, that's the only weapon of mass destruction I approve its use for. Hello.
Home defense. It's a home defense weapon.
No, I think the people in the Netherlands are doing it right. And this is what's going to happen in every country around the world. This is a civil revolt. It will not end until the government changes its policies. And the people have the power to do whatever they want. Do you know how many millions and hundreds of millions of people we have? If we all stand up and burn down the government buildings, it's over. And that's what they're doing here in the Netherlands. Slowly and surely. And this morning, the sign of the times, David DuByne, the Georgia Guidestones were blown up at 4 a.m. What say you?
The farmers have the blueprint. Once it's the farmers, the general populace will go right behind them because they're the one producing the food.
Yeah.
Truckers too. You know, they had it almost in Canada. They almost had it, but I think
no. Farmers don't produce food in America, by the way. If you haven't figured that out yet, we don't produce food in America. Our farmers produce ethanol and GMO corn, period. About 15% is actual edible food, and it's in California and other small farms.
Minimum 1,000 acres here, but you know, in the Netherlands are generally 20 acres, or you know, the big one would be 50 acres. So put that in comparison. What they got in Europe and these farmers are protesting are like 50-acre plots in comparison to like one farmer doing 1,000 acres or 10,000 acres with their massive amounts of tractors. One owner of the entire, well, it's actually agribiz now, probably BlackRock and these sort of things. Huge difference. Like we don't have that many tractors in mass. You know, Denmark's a very small country. So when all those tractors come together, but in the US, if we took all the tractors, we might be able to block one city. You know, it's in mass. It's such a large, vast nation here.
Well, this is
energy production and food production. I can't believe we even have to talk about this today, that we can't be self-sufficient on all of it and the chemical production, everything we need. Now, don't get me wrong, Diamond, I'm not a fan of the agribiz and all the chemicals and everything, but it's just the way it's done today. And going to a hard stop on that, where it's going to be another Sri Lanka, V2O here in America. And we don't need that at all.
Yeah, when you said it was
workable and a gradual taper off and going to magnetic motors for, you know, decentralized power off of Tesla devices would be a good start, so we can process many foods in our own states without having to rely on grids.
Yeah, well, you said Denmark back there, and it's the Netherlands this is happening at. That's pretty important. Now, as far as the Netherlands,
they're the same.
As far as the Netherlands,
check it out. Netherlands is the Dutch. Dutch is the Netherlands. It's the region, like the Bavaria region of Germany is a region, right?
Right. So regardless, we got sidetracked off of useless information here. The reason that they're protesting there.
That's good to put a point on the map, seriously. Okay. To know the points on the map.
It's the Netherlands.
You can't even identify the Black Sea where the grains are getting stuck in.
It's the Netherlands we're talking about. And let's get back on point here. They're protesting
maps.
Not because of a map, because of government policies. And the policies are that they had to reduce their nitrate inputs to the atmosphere. So Netherlands is so woke. It's a joke.
They're to nitrogen already.
Yeah, it's about nitrates, and you have to reduce, which if you don't know, cow shit and all manures from farms produce nitrates in the form of ammonium nitrate as they break down. And And that would mean that most farmers in the Netherlands would have to reduce their flock of all animals 70 to 95%. Now, if this in the Netherlands is an old school way of farming where you take all that crap and you put it on your fields and then you grow the food. And this is your cycle where you don't have to pay any money. You just feed the animals and they give you the fertilizer and you make the crops. Well, you would not have any more manure if you didn't have any more animals, and then you wouldn't have any more farm. And this pertains to almost 90% of all the sustainable farmers in the world. Sustainable, biodynamic, organic farming is run this way. It's been run this way since we learned how to farm 10,000 years ago. It's how we farm. And the new paradigm, the Green New Deal, to save the planet and to make everything better, is to stop the way that we've been farming forever. And these are politicians making the policy. They don't know about farming, and that's why the farmers are pissed, because the people making these rules don't know a fucking thing about growing a goddamn thing, period. And it's insane.
I love the way they're spraying the manure because
they sprayed it right on the cops.
I know. With the chemicals fertilizer, there was a manure shortage this year. Now, if anybody's first into understanding what Diamond and I are talking about, earlier in the year, there was a massive fertilizer shortage. So a huge amount of farmers swung over into using natural manures again, and there was a run on that. So the natural manure prices, whether it be chicken or poultry, pork, cow, whatever, it went hugely up in price too, doubling and tripling, following the shortages of regular chemical fertilizers doubling and tripling. So everybody's on the manure, and I love the way that they were spraying it everywhere. Like that. That would be nasty. Getting sprayed by that. Can you imagine getting sprayed by a huge amount of?
Well, a lot of these tractors are like,
What's to get it out of my eyes.
A lot of these tractors are ramming the police vehicles. I mean, they're just manhandling it, because I don't think the cops have any idea like what 140 horsepower tractor can do. It's kind of mind blowing to me that they're actually attempting to do what they're doing. But based on what the citizens,
those are big tractors, aren't they?
Yes, the ones, anything that can drive over 30, 40 miles an hour is a big tractor. Most tractors that are 50 horsepower or less barely go 15 miles an hour. So if you could drive a tractor on a highway, you got a big boy. Now, the Netherlands, and we got Sri Lanka is breaking down in 3 years. The Netherlands is breaking down now. And I just checked the Twitter feeds. They're in Italy and other countries in Europe. There are millions of people out, and they are protesting the policies. Now, I haven't gotten into this, but do you know about other European countries and unrest? Because it seems like it's spreading. And if it's going to spread in Europe, it's going to come over here quickly. So we're on a time frame of a few weeks or months where complete, total global unrest, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'll give you Italy and Cyprus again once in the news. I have a contact over in Cyprus who gives me some information about corn imports and the amount of food imports on the grain side coming into Cyprus. Now, they have about a 4-week buffer sitting there now, but their prices are rising as well, and they just have nothing to do because they're almost all imports. So they're trying to hold on, but they have all these different sources across North Africa there. They got Libya, or sorry, not Libya. They used to have Libya, but they're pulling in and trying to get from Morocco, but they were having a low yield this year, but then they come over to Tunisia, and then there's some record yield there. So you start to see that north part of North Africa, but Cyprus is from that entire Mediterranean area pulling everything they can.
Yeah, I got it.
But they're scared. They're nervous. And, they stole all their money last time too in that bail-in. And, America has the bail-in laws too. So Diamond, how many people really do you think across the banking system in America understand that their money belongs to the bank? Once you put it in the bank, right, you legally gave possession to the bank. They can choose to give it to you back or not. So Cyprus experienced that once already, but this guy's telling me, dude, prices are getting so outrageous of food that the island economy is going to be in turmoil.
Listen to this nonsense
everywhere. See,
this is Italy. This is Italy today, and they're pissed about NATO. And let me explain why. If you're new to world politics, Ukraine just asked us for another like $380 billion. We've given them like $1 trillion. They just asked us for another $400 billion. And I just went to the supermarket. I just got $100 worth of food that could barely feed me for 3 days. Everything in the supermarket where I live is up 50% in the last year. Everything, regardless of what they say on the news. Oh, inflation, we're at 8% high. Bullshit. Coffee's up 50%. Staples are up 50%. Meat is up 50%. Everything that I bought last year, I just bought 100 trash bags. They used to be $9. They were $15.50. I mean, that is the truth. The media is lying to you. Everyone knows it. The people know it in Italy. And NATO is the biggest bankruptcy for all these countries. Now we're about to go into a world war. Italy knows we're headed to the world war. America is blind to this. Some people are saying July 15th, we're going to enter the next world war. World War III starts on that day. And the European countries are the ones that are claiming this. No one in America is talking about this. This is what's happening in Italy because of what's happening with NATO and the war in Ukraine and the trillions of dollars we're sending to that corrupt Nazi country. It's complete insanity. What does that have anything to do with Italy? What does that have anything to do with US? Nothing. There is zero reason that any other country should be involved in this war. This is the predicament that the world has gotten itself into using the global cabal. These are the rich money funders that have created these wars starting from the very beginning to line their pockets with billions of dollars. They don't care about us. They will surely murder billions of people worldwide if they all get rich on the buildup back after. What say you?
Yeah, that money stretches back into the Hittite Empire, back around Petra and areas in Jordan as well. You know, that frankincense route coming up from Oman and Yemen, further down south of Saudi Arabia along the peninsula there. You know, we're stretching back that far in terms of where you can trace something back of who has held the same wealth and who has held the same vast amounts of money, gold. And then it kind of branched off. You know, you might think of Babylonians. That's kind of new stuff. You know, go back to the Hittites, 5,000 years prior, and you'll start to see where a lot of things centered around that exact culture moved off into different. You know, they had 5,000 years later. This is maybe 20 years ago. So 5,980 years later than 5,000 exactly. They found jars of preserved mushrooms in honey in the clay vessels. We're talking psilocybin mushrooms, but in the huge clay vessels that you would usually see, soaked in honey, but then the honey crystallized. So they decided to, you know, bring it back to more of a liquid and see if it was usable again. And yeah, after 5,000 years, that had stored. So think about the usefulness of honey and the usefulness of messages from other areas using natural substances. The communication is going to be dual, and if I might go off on a little woo-woo tangent here, if I could, it fits right into what you're talking about on the 15th of this world war starting. So sometimes I'll see about the energetic changes in the astrological realms because of what I know with the energetic changes on the sun and this either 400 or 2,000 year cycle that's happening right now. The elite know it. They understand it. They're riding on top of it. They're implementing a lot of policies to use their energy to try to jump on top of humanity as well. But if you look through the astrological realms, there's higher energy times in months and there's not. So you can almost forecast when there'll be an event, what the elite are going to plan to do. Because you got to think the energies right now are so different than they have been. We're entering a new age and cutting into this solar activity that's now visible on our planet with the magnetic fields and jet streams, food production, everything's out of sync. Nothing, even the brains are out of sync. The countries are out of sync. Everything that was done before us seems to be just out of sync all the way. And you can clearly see it. The last 200 years of whatever was stable is completely out of sync now. Nothing is like you're standing a foot off your body trying to wander and, you know, bumbling into doorways and things. This is exactly what's happening with the human psyche, the resonance of the planet, and you can see the sun itself. So I was going somewhere with the idea, but I kind of forgot it. Oh yeah, but here's the, no, I got it. If you're thinking about in the astrological sense, the planet that's in the star, in the zodiac itself, it quote, in the house of where that planet would reside in its own zodiac sign. All 12 of these are in their own houses except for the sun right now until the 12th of this month. So from the 2nd to the 12th of this month, All the planets are in their own houses of their own rulership. But then that changes drastically after. And the end of it is supposed to be something, well, watch as the markets are going to bounce back up. We're going to see a lot of maybe some solutions to the problem. Maybe there'll be a lot of talk about ending the Ukraine fiasco or whatever's happening globally with the financial system, and everything is going to be so hopeful. And, you know, right today, what's the 6th? By the 12th, in the next 5 days, it's going to be ramping up. It's going to be hopeful. It's going to be hopeful. And then it's just going to crash. And then, you know, what you talk about on the 15th, just mere days after that. And how many times in history have we seen all the way to the very hopeful talk, and then it crashes? And that year in hell is a perfect example, because they, up to the 12 hours before the ceasefire and all that agreements collapsed, those people were stuck for a year with nothing. And whoever wants to see the future of some cities, I encourage you, year in hell. We're talking about the same regions in what was, you know, Croatia and that whole Balkans area during this time in the 1990s, Slobodan Milosevic, you know, those kind of era days. But the peace talks were going all the way to 12 hours. Oh, it's going to be okay. All in the news. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Everything's working out. It's going to be okay. And then bam, they were cut off for a year and a half. And this exactly scenario is what you're describing on the 15th. You kind of spooked me when you said the number, because I know that all the planets are in their houses and it's supposed to be this ramp up to hopefulness. And then it collapses completely. I mean, seriously, collapses all the way through September. And then from there, it just drops down like levels and levels down through October. So something seriously, the biggest collapse since the Roman Empire, starting to be either beginning, we're getting into the war scenario, but September calls on corn, and the whole system starts to seem to unravel right now. But in the eastern areas, Asia, they're coming up with a new currency backed by commodities and gold, etc. New Bretton Woods is going to be formed from there, and we are going to be on the receiving end of everything that we've put out for the last 70 years. Talk about bad karma on the economic scapes, but here we are. So thanks for the date on that. It kind of matches up with my research.
Well, and a little fact check here. You're, in fact, completely wrong, and I was correct. Denmark and the Netherlands are two distinct countries with unique cultures, languages, and histories.
Yeah, but go back to the history. That whole area.
They're not the same country, David. Netherlands is a country.
They're not the same country, okay. Nor is Bavaria. But when you put Germany together as a country now, it's an area, like I was talking about over
so you're arguing
that was an area called the Balkans.
Moot point.
You know, that was all those countries.
Denmark and Netherlands are not the same country.
No, they're not, but they're the same region when you go back.
Yeah, Europe is the same region too. All right, let's get to precious metals before you make yourself look bad. Let's talk about why gold and silver are tanking.
I don't know. They have a border. It's the same region. Okay.
They're different countries.
Go to gold and silver.
Yeah. Why are gold and silver tanking if the markets are tanking?
Is that an open-ended question?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to know.
So I want to try to wrap two ideas together, if I could. Now, I'd like your response too, if you think there's some teeth or validity behind this here. So the amount of paper contracts out right now can be manipulated because I think it's 380 contracts for silver exist for 1 ounce of silver.
Yeah.
The physical, put it in your hand, about 380. Okay. So if people do come and say, I want my silver in my hand, then what happens? There's going to be 379 people that don't get their ounce of silver. So if you can get that ounce, then you can on sell it for a premium. So if everybody came for their silver at the same time, you're going to be able to get the physical in your hand and then sell it for a higher price the very minute you get it.
Yeah.
I could double the price, whatever, market value. Somebody will pay it. A minute later, after I get possession, somebody will offer me a higher price to get it because they don't have it. The same thing's about to happen with the corn and the wheat and the soybean. More of the soybean and the wheat, or the soybean and the corn, coming in September. Contract delivery for the Chicago Board of Exchange. And then in December, also with the CBOE, they're coming for the physical commodities this year to get the arbitrage, because if they can get it the very minute that they get 1,000 tons of corn, they can sell it for a higher price.
Well, and the grain industry's tanked 4 days before the silver tanked today. Well, silver and gold have been tanking for 48 hours. And the grain industry tanked about a day before that. And it's all based on speculation. Now, I went and looked at the real physical numbers. Here's what's really happening. People are fucking poor. They're piss poor. They sold 500,000 ounces of precious metals at the mint last month. This month, less than 70,000 ounces. They're like, what's going on? We're like, people have no money. They're trying to buy food. And it's very bizarre how they blame it on the paper contracts and not inflation, in my opinion.
Or they're just running out of silver, so they're reducing their production and blaming it on something else. So actually, you're looking at the silver supply in real terms.
Yeah, more bullion has been purchased this year than like any year ever in history, like millions of bullion ounces from the mint.
Yeah, so take that onto the corn now, or the wheat or the soy. So the September delivery is going to be more about the corn. So look for the corn play. Traders understand it. It's almost in every product that we eat. It's in the ethanols, like you said. It's in the animal feeds. So if you're going to target something that'll have a higher resale value 3 minutes after you get it in your hand, it's going to be corn.
Yeah.
And the amount of fertilizer used to grow corn this year, some areas are having great production, like East Tennessee, some places west, but majority of corn growing areas, they'll have some yield, yeah, but it's not going to be great. Wheat is where it's atrocious, and especially down where you're at and further out into Kansas stuff, dry. But if you get the wheat, they're going to do the same exact thing. They're going to, all these traders are trying to get their hand on physical commodities. So this year coming in September, and I think it's September 16th, that week running into September 16th, more people than ever recorded in human history are going to try to take physical delivery of their product instead of cash settling. Now, normally they're looking at around 1, maybe 2% to take the actual physical corn. But this year it's up around 15, 12, 13, 14, 15%. Already saying, yes, we want, get our barges ready. We're going to pay for this, get our rail cars ready. Oh, wait, there's a rail car shortage. There's actually a flat bottom barge shortage as well, going down the Mississippi, like St. Louis loading port as well. Like that kind of, using the locks to transit that thing. So what's happening? I think the end of the financial system is coming in September. It goes, one of two things are going to happen. So the banks that are holding open contracts for these futures on corn, if they can't close the contract, they are fined daily. But then on the farming end of it, they've also pledged tonnage into, but with the dismal yields in some area and the fertilizer shortages, they're going to have reduced yields. So they're going to have a fine per day as well on the farms. And what I mean by that is a farmer might have pledged 1,000 tons into the Chicago delivery port there at CBOE, but they could only produce 800 tons on their farm this year because there was not enough fertilizer. The pesticides weren't there. The herbicides weren't there. Diesel prices were highest ever. And then anything that they needed for dryers on using natural gas was also elevated prices. So everywhere across their yields were diminished naturally and also man-made wise. Huge windstorms might have destroyed crops at the end, whatever it is. They're going to have to find 200 tons to close their contract. So they're going to bid out on the open market at a higher price to get that 200 tons to close their contract.
This is what the agricultural industry is hiding, and this is what farmers are trying to get out to the masses, that based on what's happening, and that's why I brought up Sri Lanka in the beginning. And we are in the first year of the 3-year Sri Lanka experiment. And what happens in the first year is not much. But by the end of the season is exactly what happens in the first year. Everyone speculates at the beginning of the season, wow, it's going to be okay. I will just an average season, 1,000 an acre, this 100 bushels, whatever. And they put that in. They literally have to turn that number in. They turn those numbers in at the turn at like Christmas and New Year's in January. That's when they turn them in. Then they put in the must plant in June 15th, by June 15th, how much acreages I planted. So I said, I'm going to give you this many acres. Then they do the must plant. And then they calculate, okay, he's planting the same amount in acres or whatever. Okay, so he's right. But that's wrong because there's no fertilizer. There's no herbicide. There's no chemical inputs. There's nothing happening during the growing season. Then you got the derecho, the hail, the drought, the extra rain. Because we're going to see both extremes. And this is what the climate tards don't realize, the climate extremists. When first it was going to be all drought, we're all going to die. Now they're like, no, it's drought and rain. It's everything. Yeah, that's exactly what we said before you went crazy. And you lied to us and said only one thing. The people that believe in natural climate cycles like you and I and grand solar minimum magnetic reversal. We believe in natural climate variability. And when it increases, natural climate variability increases everywhere. So you're going to get bigger crop losses in one places and good yields in other places. But when you eliminate the chemical inputs that make crops and harvests, which are the herbicides and the fertilizers, whether you believe in them or not, I don't care about the end game. We're talking about a global governance and world food supply and production. You are going to have low production. And so in August and September, we're going to have piss poor production. You said 800 from 1,000. That is that's very generous. And what happened in Sri Lanka, the reduction was 65% in the first year. 65%. That means if you said 1,000 bushels, you would only bring in 450. That's a huge difference. That's less than half.
Well, wait, if I could
we won't know until we know, right? We won't know until September or August.
Yeah, I'll agree. 60% of the farmers change what their intended planting was.
Yeah. They go from
60%.
My friends are in Texas where it's the driest, and they went from corn, and then they were like soybean, and they were like, no, not soybean. We'll go to cotton, but then there's no chemicals for cotton. So there's like nothing. It doesn't matter what you change to, you're still going to get a lower yield. And each time you change, it's a later planting and a lower yield. So if you changed your planting, you're starting with a lower yield. And then if you have no chemical inputs, you're getting an even lower yield. It's like a triple whammy.
I'll explain again. I was doing a simple 1-to-1. So the fertilizer shortages this year around the world are running around 20%. So I'll just even it off 20%. So on a 1% application or non-application, you're going to lose that percentage in your yield. So if you reduce your application by 1%, you're going to lose 1% in yield. If you reduce it by 10%, you're going to lose 10% in yield. So we know the global fertilizer shortage right now is running at 20%. So you're going to knock 20% off almost everything grown in the Northern Hemisphere right now. But that doesn't include, okay, that's just at the growing and planting stage. See, Diamond, this is where I want to get into it. That's the growing and planting stage. And we went through that tumultuous time of all those inputs tripling. And farmers couldn't plant because it got too expensive. But now we come to the plant protection time. During the growth maturation phases, when they do come up to where you get ears of corn, heads of wheat, whatever, they don't have the pesticides or the herbicides. So if you don't have anything to protect your crops, like we've been Japanese beetle damaged out here badly, if you can't put anything on that to stop your pests, you're going to get massive damage. And it could be corn slugs, could be beetles, grasshoppers. I don't know. There's an enormous amount of things that love to eat. You like sweet corn? Well, so does everything else in nature. Welcome to the club. But then what about the herbicides? So that super expensive fertilizer that got thrown out over the whole crop over there. What if there's all these other grasses and plants and weeds and stuff growing in between the rows? So it's just like one solid canopy of green. Prior, it was very clean, nice rows because they were able to maintain and not have any weeds grow where there's other sunlight and inputs like fertilizer and moisture and sunlight. And now you're battling with weeds because then I don't even know what's going to happen with the harvest process, because there are going to be so many weeds included in that it hasn't happened before. And those combines are set for whatever it is, corn. It's not set to pick up ironweed that's mixed in there.
Excellent point. The harvesters are not designed.
They're not prepared for that either. No. And they don't have the herbicides to control the weeds, but then they don't have the pesticides to control the nibblers, the little things that want to eat everything. So now we're talking about knocking more yields off from natural pests, knocking more yields off from competition from different non-target species weeds or plants, or I call them natural medicines myself at times, like the wild lettuce and thing.
No, and with the chemical inputs that we've been doing for decades, in just the last 10 years, we have super bugs and we have super weeds. So if we don't have these pesticides, the plants get overcome with bugs and weeds, period.
Now, how much percentage is that down then? Okay, 20% off for fertilizer. How many percent down for no pesticides? How many percent down for no herbicides? And then you're going to add in cost on top of cost on running costs. And diesel's going to go higher by the time we get into harvest season.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Get your magic calculator out there, Diamond.
Let's finish up on this topic because it's the most important.
You want to go back to split screen?
Yeah, and the mainstream has been now reporting the last 3 days on the Earth's magnetic poles. There are many sources. This is NBC News around July 4th. The Earth's magnetic poles aren't about to flip. That's what they're saying. Now, this is all based on a paper. And let me bring up the
But wait, let me stop with that last sentence there, because you know me, I do that. A new study determined that weakness in the geomagnetic field over the South Atlantic will probably fade away. Based on what and what past cycles that they could say it would fade away at this point as well, based on past cycles that they've mapped out that could show a fade away during this time. Why are they so confident? I mean, I want to see the prior data that would lead to the conclusion that this time will fade away. But that's the way I think, man, you know?
Well, I'll show you the data, and it's coming from a paper that's coming out. Let me see if I can pull this up. Yes, it's there it is.
I got just a message here from William, a guy I know that is in New Zealand, and he's also an Aussie, but he lives in New Zealand. Says fruit growers face years of recovery, Sydney floods. So everywhere you look, I mean, it takes years to recover your agriculture. It's not like a minute thing here. They're talking about years. So then what happens in Australia when their fruits are gone, their grains are limited, and
we're in World War III. We don't have time. So this is a really good expose on the fact
we don't have time. We're out of time. We're truly out of time.
All of the things are collapsing together now, and that's why we're now having this podcast. Now, this paper shows, and it reveals everything that you asked for. It shows the magnetic dipole rapidly dropping here. And the paper is an obfuscation from the truth, like all mainstream garbage papers that are coming out.
So give us the truth, you know, explain that to me. I want to see those charts.
Listen, if you read the paper, it says that this has happened a dozen times in the last million years. And it says that the last magnetic reversal was 750,000 years ago. And this
doesn't make sense.
It probably won't be a magnetic reversal. It's just a magnetic reduction like every other time. They never use the word magnetic excursion. They never explain mass extinction, the last one that just happened during the Younger Dryas during a magnetic excursion. They don't explain that every magnetic excursion at this scale causes a mass extinction in the paleontological record. All 12 of them prior to the last geomagnetic reversal. They don't explain it in this paper. They just say that there won't be a magnetic reversal and everything's fine, which is where we're going with science. And I think that
so let me ask you a question then. You know, how far do the poles need to migrate toward each other before we get to this point where jet streams and cloud cells start bunching on each other, affecting more crop production?
It's just like 10,
that
15
leads
more
into
percent.
Exactly what you're talking about. It's
We're
an
not
excursion.
We're about 20% away, maybe 10
not
years.
Not a full reversal, but enough to really like completely reset civilization, not even society.
Yeah, in 10 years, if we still keep dropping down that ramp, and let's just bring that back up there. This is the dipole moment. So back
here,
the
maps up there with the blue globe. Can you make that one a little bit larger? The one with the red on the bottom there, we can see that anomaly below Brazil and South America there on the going out in the Atlantic Ocean.
What do you want to? Which one? The bottom graph?
No, the top one with the that says A and B with the global, where you get dark blue and then the dark reds down at the bottom there.
This one?
Southern, right.
Yeah, so this is what's showing you.
Can you scale that up so we can make it bigger on the screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Tell me when you like it.
Yeah, right. Okay, keep it going a little bigger. Yeah.
Oh, that's
okay.
the best we can do.
That's good.
Let's do that.
And if we could see what the text is at the bottom to explain some of the observations there.
So this is the field intensity, where blue would be in the negative nanotesla and red would be in the positive nanotesla. And you can see here that this is a very bad graph. It doesn't really show anything. It shows field intensity, which almost nobody looks at, but it shows the fact that, look at this blue here in A. This is the most important. Do you see how dark blue and how huge this is? This South American anomaly, which is now be off the chart, David. You see how it's below 30 nanotesla in the dark? This is what they're claiming is going to shrink, and we're all going to be saved, that region.
Well, what happens if it goes to zero? That's no magnetic field.
No, there's no evidence that field, that area is going to shrink because it's been growing. They're just saying, based on looking at the last 10,000 years, when areas like this grow, they shrink again. And I'll agree with that because everything is a cycle. The paper is so useless as scientific information because it was created and funded using the paradigm that we're living in, which is climate catastrophe. And they're saying that, oh, no, you're all safe. Tax CO2, the magnetic field is fine. It always does this. The thing the paper left out was that when it does this, there are huge problems in the biosphere and on the planet, including, but not limited to, every time this field varies this much, the sea level rises and falls 400 feet. And that's something they left out in the paper, which is pretty mind blowing. And also there's a mass extinction of 65% of land mammals during the last one. They left that out.
Yeah, and the cosmic ray increases too. Because you know, when I was talking, you know, you and I both talked with Robert Felix when you arranged LeakCon back in the day before the vid, that we used to be able to travel the planet freely. Remember at LeakCon, you and I both talked to him, and he was so well versed on how those things are coming in on precise timelines of things just pop out of the new woodwork, and there's massive cosmic ray bombardment because of magnetic field depletion, and suddenly new species, the very next generation born is a new species from the prior. You know, are we into one of these now? Is this why they're trying to get everybody to at least conceive of all these different variants of what a human being could be? Because perhaps in the magnetic reversal, a new one will pop out as such, and it could be quantified using today's wordage.
Yeah, but we banged Neanderthals back in the day, and Denisovians.
Well, they banged you.
Or whatever.
Us and them, man. That was a serious thing. Did you ever read that book, Us and Them?
Yeah, so cross species has been going on forever. What's more importantly is that the actual good scientists that are in my field of paleontology and geology and paleoclimatology are now publishing papers that are showing and demonstrating using real science, observational science, where they're looking at species. They have demonstrated up to 5 instantaneous speciation accounts within 100 years of our modern times. And this is exactly what happens during these magnetic excursions. When you get into these unique environments, I want the public to think about mass extinctions less as being deadly, as being more opportunistic. The only creatures that die during these mass extinctions are the weak ones that can't make it in the new realm. So it's not a bad thing. We thought it was a bad thing. Why would you want to make it into the new realm, which you're not really suited for? That seems stupid. I wouldn't want to live in a world that I'm not suited for. The world I'm living in now, I'm completely suited for. I can go wild harvest. I can go fish. I can go hunt.
No, you're not. No, you're not. You still need to wear clothing. You were a cloned being. I mean, look at that. You're so unprepared for the natural environment. If you don't have clothing, I mean, look at all the other animals. You talked about hunting elk earlier.
No, only because of where I live geographically.
We need clothing and things. Why?
Only where I am living geographically, which I put myself in. I drove myself here. Is why I need clothes. If I moved to the equator, I would never need clothes. And if I didn't need clothes,
I could see you running in the forest with banana leaves.
No, but if I lived there for an extended period of time, I think that I would develop skin that was thicker or skin that was darker and more hair. I would be more suited to that realm. This skin is not suited to the equator. Only a small portion of my body has equatorial genes, which is why if I do go in the sun, I don't burn, because I have some of those genetics. But the world has been changing so dramatically in geologic timeframes that the human species hasn't been able to keep up, because we are rapidly expanding around the world based on our ability to move. Most species can't move like we do. And we've started to move around the world about, in my opinion, about 100,000 years ago using ships. And we got ahead of ourselves, because every 26,000 years, there's a catastrophe. Every 6,000 years in that realm, there's a small catastrophe. And we just don't have the opportunity to evolve in time. And the next one's coming. And I moved thousands of miles here. Most people wouldn't be able to do that in a natural environment. The Clovis expansion took 8,000 years, if that is even true. The Solutrean expansion took 8,000 years. It takes, and multiply that by 3, it's 24,000 generations to get to where you are. So And each time we get wiped out by a mass extinction. So I think that there's something to be said about the reset cycle that we're now in. And maybe it's new. What do you think about that idea? That this is a new cycle, maybe in the last 4 million years, that has afflicted our planet.
It depends if you think that the descent into a cooler step down for the glaciation, this cycle will be cooler than the last glaciation. Are we heading into like a super glaciation cycle? Because it seems since the last 400,000 years that this one is going to step a little cooler in this 500,000th or half a millionth year. But it seems a lot of these cycles are on 4 or 5 sets of 5. Like this grand solar minimum, going back 5 of those brings you back 2,000 years prior. But then there's also talk of, you know, heavier, more powerful glaciation cycles. I think it's a bad term to say snowball Earth, but you know, a level above what the normal glaciation would be in terms of cooling. Now, what that would entail from the decreased power input off of Birkeland current into our star and why that happens every 500,000 years, that's a completely different discussion. But as it looks now, what would be the repercussions for civilization if we step down more quickly than this sort of gradual drop off that we've seen over the last several hundred years, even the last 3,000 years?
Yeah, I don't think
to 100,000.
Geologically speaking, it's not gradual. And if we just go into the recent past and we just do a cycle analysis of the last several 26,000 year cycles.
Yeah, and the 4 of those is a 1 glaciation cycle. See, that's what we're getting. Like they mapped it out. 4 of those is 1 glaciation cycle.
If we go back 26,000 years, we are at the peak of the Wisconsinian glaciation. And now we're there. Are we at the peak of any glaciation? No. So unless
the entry into, for sure, somewhere along the line.
26,000 years ago was the peak of the Wisconsinian glaciation. This is based on proxy data. So if we're at the same point now, why aren't we at the peak of the next glaciation? It's either that in 500 years we will be, it's that quick, or something's wrong. That's it. There's no other answer. We either don't know the reason or we're wrong.
Or space is expanding and we're moving out into a different area of space with a different energetic medium in it that will cause something different to happen. Because you know, you showed me that chart, Diamond, one time where we were looking back like 85 million years and it was pretty steady and it was flat, and then it started to drop off, and then we get to where we are now in terms of you know, obliquity and glaciation and cycles of cooling.
Yeah, but those obliquity and glaciation cycles have been very strong and very consistent for 4 million years.
Yeah, so then we're in a variant now. So where are we going from here?
The only people that claim we're in a variant are the global warmists that were in the Anthropocene. So if you think we're in a new variant, then you have to come up with a new name, or else you believe what the global warmists believe, that humans are affecting the climate and that we're not going to go into the next glacial cycle, which I don't believe at all.
For sure.
Yeah, I believe the latter that I proposed about 3 minutes ago, that the whole process takes just a few hundred years. And if you look at the Dansgaard-Oeschger cycles, and I'm about to do I've been preparing about a week on a podcast over at
what do you have there? Let me see the screen again.
I don't have anything, but the only thing on the screen is
moi. All right. Yeah, can you go through a couple more of the charts there? Let me look at those. Can you show me those?
Yeah, well, let me get back to the Dansgaard-Oeschger cycles.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The DO, right?
What they show is a little bit more rapid shift. And we're going to look at them. Let's see if we can get this image. Just let me open this image and see if it comes up.
So what you're referring to is the DO cycle.
Yeah, this actually shows it here in the paper, which is kind of good. If I can just get this up here. All right, let's just blow this up and see. Can you see that the graph to the left?
Yes.
How about this graph right here?
There, yeah, 1,300 year periodicity. You need to bring it down a sliver there. Back in. It's just the top of the frame there. Can we bring it down a little bit? Yeah.
How about this? Let's see what that
Figure
looks like.
5. Yeah, that's perfect.
This is great.
The way you had it was perfect.
You can see over here the Dansgaard-Oeschger signals. They're about 1,000 years, 1,048 or whatever. But sometimes they express and they don't. But when they do, they're almost geologically instantaneous. You can see here, this is only thousands of years. So we're looking at just, this is present right here where we are. And then you can see the last 7, 8, 9,000 years. Now, this is what happened. So do you see how sometimes they get washed out? Here we can go from 1,000 and we'll go all the way back just before 0 AD to about 400 BC. There was only one big cycle in those 2,000 years because the one Dansgaard-Oeschger cycle got washed out for some reason because of some other climatic effects. So they don't always express every 1,000 years, but every 2,000 or 3,000 years, there's a big one. And in those big cycles, every 2,000 or 3,000 years, there's a climatic effect in a massive scale where temperatures can drop 5 to 15 degrees C in just a few decades. And we are—
Oh, that'd be catastrophic. Even year number 2 would be catastrophic.
Right. But this is a lot of papers that I read in the last 2 decades have been supporting the idea that during the Dalton minimum, we were supposed to go into a Dansgaard-Oeschger cycle, but it got shut down. And sure enough, on the graph, there's no activity during that time. And it got shut down and got held there. And so this is the next opportunity for the big shift that we're living in. This cycle, this is the bond cycle, the 1,000-year cycle, the Dansgaard-Oeschger cycle, the grand solar minimum cycle, the magnetic reversal cycle, all at the same time. So what happens on this point is bad news in the next 500 years. The good news is that we will all die before the bad news. So let's say in the next 10 years, the field shifts and weather goes crazy and cosmic rays flux. We're all going to die of cancer and our hair is going to fall out. And then our future generation will evolve. We're never going to live to see the maximum glaciation that may occur in just 500 years, in my opinion. And that's based on—
look at that longitude on the east quadrant there, that B chart. What's that looking at there with the red star? I see. Is that the longitude of—
This is, if you look to the right,
the highest or the most cooling took place? Because you're looking at 60 degrees east.
No, the position, that's the position of the pole. So look to the right in the map.
Yeah, that's a goodie right there too. That pole position is really good one.
Pole position as it relates to the Dansgaard-Oeschger cycle, the magnetic twitch, and the position of the pole, and what's happened for the last 8,000 years, which you can clearly see that the pole has been at the North Pole for 8,000 years, but now the blue line is showing it's moving away. That's bad news. It's not staying at the North Pole anymore. It's moving towards Siberia. That's the blue line. So that breakaway point is 1906 from the cluster at black, or 1859 if you like to think of the Carrington event as the breakoff point, which is a little earlier, more like at that squiggly twitch in the black line before the blue line. But what it shows is that our pole has been constant for the entire Holocene at the North Pole, and now it's moving. The magnetic pole, not the rotational pole, because a lot of people that are new to this game have no idea there's multiple poles. The rotational pole is always at the north, tilted 23 degrees, the planet spins on. This is the magnetic dipole, completely different.
Yeah, then what's causing the magnetic change that's affecting our Earth's magnetic field?
Well, it was supposedly kicked off by the Carrington event. So the Carrington event caused the shift. So if a major solar flare causes the core to shift its rotation or super rotation, I just put a video out on how the core doesn't rotate the same speed as the surface of the planet. It actually slows down, reverses, and goes forward again. It's a 6-year cycle. And that's what's causing the time of day to get slower, or the planet to increase rotation, however you want to look at it. Very confusing to the layman because there's so many dynamics going on. The Earth is actually spinning faster by the core slowing down or spinning faster. It's antithetical, but it has to do with inertia and momentum.
But but then where does that transfer up to what we consider the mantle and then the top layer of the crust?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at what happens on the planet. The point, if you're looking for the answer for the magnetic excursion, it's from the sun. The sun triggered it. The sun made it happen. And the sun is now going to control the narrative. This has nothing to do with our Earth. Our Earth is
no, but what's powering our
so
stars? I'm trying to
insignificant.
take a next step out. Okay, then
Yeah.
what's that influence on our star that's creating this inner, you know, this planet or the solar system effects that are
Well,
happening on every planet? We're going out, go to our star and then step a step back going that way. What powers that? And
all
where?
stars in every star in every solar system in our galaxy is powered by the center of the galaxy, just like our planet is powered by the center of our planet. So every circular spinning region has a power source. Our star, the Birkeland current at the Z pinch, is powered by the center of the galaxy. Now, whatever is powering Sagittarius A in the center of the galaxy is powering our sun. And another thing that's come into light in mainstream media in the last few years is what's happening in the center of the galaxy. They say there's a black hole there. Then they said that there's 7 plasmoids. Now there's a neutron star. I mean, it's a fairy tale. In the last 3 years, we've had 100 stories of what's going on there. But whatever's going on there is powering our sun.
The Hunab Ku, as referenced by the Mayans.
Yeah. I think it's like a dynamo, like the same thing that's happening in the center of the planet, whatever that plasmoid is that's spinning, it doesn't spin always the same time. It's like, wow.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Same thing happening.
Cycle.
On the same thing's happening at the center of the universe.
Right, but it would all be the same if not the center of the universe is itself, but you bring it out to the galactic core that also vibrate in that same frequency, higher, lower pattern. And then as it came out into our regional area, the spiral arm where we sit right here with our star, that would also be influenced by just our local galaxy following that same pattern.